All right, welcome to the session Adding Agility to Your CET Practices. Elevate your block game. This is who I am. So I am Christin Murphy, and I work for Workspace, which is a dealer in Des Moines, Iowa. I've been working in the industry for just under 20 years. My current role is a design lead at our company, and I've only been using, I say only, I've only been using CET since 2018, and I absolutely love the program. The main manufacturers that I have specified with CET includes H&I and Steelcase, and I absolutely love blocks. You'll hear my teammates say that probably about me. Oh yeah, Kristen, she talks about blocks all the time, for so many reasons. So let's get into why I love them so much. This has to do with some of the problems that we are trying to solve, and I feel like are trying to solve on a daily basis as dealer designers, which is let's work on pre-planning with getting set up with the end in mind. And what does that really mean? Well, it means we're trying to set ourselves up for success. We're trying to set ourselves up with quicker ways to tackle revision work that we know will inevitably happen. I don't think that if I were to ask anyone in the industry whether they've had a project without any changes at all from beginning to end, probably wouldn't ever see a hand go up. And we're also talking about making live design less cumbersome for you and for the client. Just trying to get a little bit more comfortable with using live design on a daily basis. It just is such a tremendous way to get so much done in a very short amount of time. And it sure makes the client feel good to be that integrated in with the process. So what all these things help us do is add agility to our process. And one of the ways we kind of measure this is we actually create an alternative timeline for ourselves on our project where we're actually doing reviews sooner. So not putting as much work into and building the client, let's say a Taj Mahal, when they had in their head we were supposed to be doing the Eiffel Tower. Two very different things. In this little chart here, review one shows much early on, less effort, less time, and we're finding out sooner where the client really wants to end up. So making it easier on ourselves. So let's talk about the client that I'm talking about that everyone has. Moira's her name. I changed her name for the purpose of this presentation, but the importance of really practicing this agility is that it's much easier to adapt to the change. It's much quicker to make accommodations, to change things and change a lot of things really quickly. We're also talking about integrating in customer centricity. So having them feel a part of the process. It's something that they're doing with us together versus us doing it for them and they review, but it's a great integration and a wonderful change management tool is what it ends up becoming. They become this culture change champion because they were a part of making the changes and making things happen. And then efficiency and productivity. How can we get there quicker? How can we be more productive? How does all this happen? Well, those geniuses at CET at Configura decided blocks were an absolutely amazing thing. And I am 100% there. I'm a believer. Why aren't you? Why don't we use them all the time? These are some of the common things that I've heard around getting feedback. You know, what's the reason you aren't using blocks or blocks weren't utilized on this project? And these are some of the things that I've heard, and maybe some of these will resonate with you, is they take too much time. There's the perception that maybe they take too much time. I just forgot to use them. I don't know how to use them. And this was just one that I heard the other day. Oh, I already got too far in my drawing and I just didn't want to go back and create them. So all these are very real. One or more of these may resonate with you. Hopefully at the end of this session, I'll have you convinced. I'll have you be believers. So let's hop into kind of how my mind works and how my mind approaches first as I'm looking at a plan. And, you know, a lot of times, well, for the simplicity of using this floor plan for this session, this is an A&D developed plan. So we kind of already have a space plan to work with. So what I've done here is I've kind of grouped the different blocks that I have in my head with what we're going to have in terms of all of the blocks associated with this project in particular. We have some seating types, we have some table types, and then we have some private office and workstations. Now, as I'm going through this plan, we'll kind of start over here in this area. I'm highlighting all the things that I know are going to be common. So let's say this lounge for the reception area. And this occasional table is also a separate block. And the reason I've separated these is because so I can use them singularly in other areas. So versus a group together. So one of the things that I know about this client is that the lounge and the occasional table that they use in their reception areas is coincidentally also the same furniture type that they use in their wellness areas. So because I didn't group block this, I can just place these objects in individually. And if I need to make modifications, such as change the fabric to a vinyl or whatever, I'll be able to do those changes really quickly. In terms of office, so not all of the office suites in this plan are the same exact shape. So when we look at this office, it's a different shape than, let's say, this office over here. So what I actually have, there's some dotted lines here. And basically what those are indicators that this is a block within a block situation. So inside of this block, I have a guest chair that's for the private office that's repeated a couple times, and then the guest table that's here. And then I also have my right-handed office typical. And inside that, I have my desk chair that's blocked. So this desk chair is a block inside of this right-handed private office typical, which is a block. And the reason I've separated these two is in exact instances like this, where I can adjust the components inside the office suite based on the size and orientation of the office. So workstation wise, you can see here, my dotted line, I've got another block within a block, actually in this instance, within a block occasion. So I have a 6-pack here, which is blocked, which is the same as the one next to it, as the one next to it, as the one next to it. Inside each one of these, I'm also planning on having component blocks, one that's right-handed, one that's left-handed. And then also inside of that component block, I have separately blocked a workstation desk chair. Now, in this instance for this client, I know that my private office task chairs are the same exact model as the workstation task chairs. Now, that's not always the case, but for this client in particular, they like to use the same. Equal for all is sort of their mentality. So this is kind of at least the start of how I initially approach where I want all my blocks. And especially for more complex open offices and maybe larger ones, I'm pre-defining too, all right, what types of blocks am I gonna have for workstations? I'll have a 6-pack, I'll have an 8-pack, I'll have a single-sided 4-pack, things like that. I start to think through what are all of those I'm gonna start pre-building before populating the plan. So let's hop into CET. So first and foremost, you'll see this is where I start template-wise. So if you don't have a template, your company doesn't have one right now, I would highly recommend it It's an absolutely wonderful thing to set up for yourself and your other design team members around how to do things consistently as a department. So I'm going to walk through some of those things. In this upper corner, just going to make that a little bit larger here. So up in this corner, you'll see we've got these different sections of different colored notes. So what we've decided to do is we want to have some of these notes and dimensions for like some general notes, general dimensions, but then we also have these other categories where we're talking about notes and dimensions related to components, related to panels, related to electrical. Now this comes in handy when we start to look at some of our prints, our papers, where we can change up our filters. So I've got my 2D plan here. I have a pre-set up rendering photo right here. This is kind of my typical how I like to set things up. So this paper is already loaded, it's already in here. So when I'm going into, let's say, an install plan, and I want to highlight the dimensions for the installers on attributes related to panels, what I can do is alter this black and white filter and turn off the visibility, turn on and off the visibility of some of those notes. So in a really nice way, have everything black and white plan-wise, but then be able to highlight in particular the notes associated with my panels. Same for electrical. I mean, how often are we putting in suggestions and making dimensions for architecture firms on where we want floor cores for our workstations? So a lot of those things we've already populated into our template and they're ready to go. So all we have to do is come in here and hit A to copy in place. And they have all of those really nice attributes, categories. So as I click on these notes, you can see that the category that it's associated with are ones that we've actually created internally here at our company. And so it belongs in this category. Going on to this section down here, these are kind of our rendering enhancements. We only use these for renderings, these elements that kind of zhuzh up the space. We're not assigning these to blocks or using them in blocks by any means, but really they are for like rendering purposes only. So as a team, we kind of worked to define what do we want to have as some of our go-tos, and we basically came to a consensus. We're going to have these options. We're going to have these options for our plants. And then we're also going to have some of these desktop items to enhance our visualizations. So we already have those in the plan, pre-populated, ready to go. There's some consistency across the designers in the department. And this is something that I've actually done is I've put in some ergonomic tools that I find that my salespeople end up utilizing a lot on projects. Hey, could you put that cable manager in, or could you use this monitor arm? So I already have those ready and preloaded in my template. This little guy was actually something that I learned in took away from one of the sessions from last year's CET Experience, which is just basically a text box from the CET extension. Just this little guy right here, this text. And once I placed it in, it's just adding a background color. So when I have my live design sessions with clients, I'll take this dialog box and I'll hit A for copy. And this is how I'll keep my electronic notes. I'm kind of an electronic notes taker as well. If I don't have to use paper, I won't. And this is a bit of an out for something that maybe is a little too intimidating to do in front of the client. Like I'll list today's date, 13/2023. And then let's say one of the items is change all workstation panels to be 8 by 12. I don't know. That's ridiculous. Let's say they were 6 by 6. That's not necessarily something that I want to take the time to modify in front of the client then and there for live design. So I'll just make that note here in my meeting notes, and then I'll go back to it later when I have the time to devote to it and work on it. So, all right, so let's start to populate this plan a little bit. I've got this little working space where I kind of do my work off to the side. So I've got some favorites ready to go here. So while this is loading, this is one of those other things where manufacturers are getting better and better about offering so many different types of typicals. And a lot of them have typicals libraries. This is so great. So from my perspective, if I don't have to create something from scratch, this is great. This is saving me time. If I can get something in here that is even remotely close, maybe it's the same panel system, probably most likely. So this is what I bring in first. So this is kind of my starting point. And what I want to do first, I'm going back to my plan, I'm starting to create my component blocks. Now, if your manufacturer doesn't have the option to create component blocks, I'd highly suggest writing to them and letting them know it's something that you want. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I highlighted everything, and I'm going to copy this off to the side twice. And I'll show you here in a minute why. Okay, so one of these is I'm just going to use as my pod. And one of these I'm going to use to create my left hand, and one of these I'm going to use to create my right. So I'm going to remove all the items here that I don't need. For my right-handed typical. And now I'm going to do the same to create my left-hand typical. All right. So now here's the beginnings of. So these are the things that I need to start. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to highlight this station, and I'm going to right click, and nope, I do not want a create block. I do not want to create block. Sometimes, you know, developers create all of these rules for the furniture, and because we're all human, sometimes there are just certain things that don't work out the way we think they should. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do something where it's basically I'm going to trick these components to be a component block. So I've stuck in a work surface that I know connected to the panels. I'm going to right click on the work surface, and now I have a component block as an option. So I'm going to create this component block. I'm going to say work surface 6 by 6 or workstation 6 by 6 right hand. So you're always going to want to name a block. You're never going to want to just have it be the name that CET gives it, because then you'll never know what it is. It just assigned it components block at 2:20 p.m. So I'm going to close this, and well, but you got that work surface in there. Just go ahead and go in, delete that work surface back out that you used to create that component block, and you still have your component block. So I'm going to do it one more time for this left-hand version. Again, we're going to trick this. No, you really do want to be a component block. Don't give up. Sometimes there are little workarounds that you need to do. All right, so we're going to call this workstation 6 by 6 left hand. We're going to close it. We're going to go into it, take that guy out. So now we have our left hand component block. So this guy's all nice. This guy's nice. Oh, something I forgot to mention. When you are creating that component block, just because you copied it along with the panels, you highlighted all of it in its entirety, doesn't mean that those carry with it. Basically, what it does is it just takes all the things inside of those panels. It ignores the panels completely when you're creating a component block. So when I do hit A for copy, it's just copying the components. All right, so let's go back to our 4-pod. And what I'm going to do here is remove all of these things that were in here, because I'm going to copy my component blocks that are all nicely all together and paste it into that 4-pod. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to get that to unsnap. I'm going to create a block for my workstation task chair. So that's what I'm going to call it, workstation task chair, and hit close. So now my task chair is a block within the component block. So I'm going to copy this into our other hand as well. But basically what this allows me to do is change the specs on this chair one time versus 2 times, once in the right hand and once in the left hand. So I'm going to copy this component block, come into this guy, going to replace you for something smarter. So let's say the client not feeling that Merlot mesh. We're going to switch it, go back to our drawing, make the change once. All right. And what I would suggest also is, now you'll kind of have to play this by ear in terms of what you block inside your component block. But let's say that you wanted to do a let's say that you wanted to do a mobile ped. I'm going to put a cushion on it. I'm just going to turn off my snap here for a second. Let's just say that's obviously too tight. That's not really realistic. But my point is around this is, if there's something else that you can block within the component block and only have to change it once, more power to you. So with a component block, you make the change once in that one, you make a change again in the right hand. With this mobile ped, for example, we can just have this be a block in itself. So if we did have to change the cushion, for example, we only have to do it one time. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it into our other one here. Now when I say you kind of have to use your best judgment. So manufacturers have come up with a lot of really great auto tools and auto hardware and auto connecting. Maybe between these two, there's a ganging bracket, maybe because they're side by side, one needs a counterweight and one doesn't. So once you make this into a block, you'll actually remove some of those smart attributes that happen when it's not blocked. So doing something like a mobile ped with a cushion top is fine to do as a block, because it's not dependent on anything else. So now we've got our mobile ped blocked in there too. So if we do change the mobile or the cushion, we're only doing it one time versus twice inside of each component block. All right, so now we're ready to copy. So this is where it starts to come together really quickly. Once you've defined what the inside of a workstation looks like, then it's just a matter of hitting A for copy. So now you'll see that it's kind of got this yellow rectangle next to it. So basically what it wants to do is it wants to find one of the panels that is associated with this component block. So I'm not copying the panels, but it wants to find the connection. So I've got my right hand typicals in. I'm going to come over to my left hand and start pasting this one in as well. So there we go. Really quickly, I've got a 4-pack of workstations ready to go. So I'm going to copy this off to the side one more time. And I'm going to make, let's say, a 6-pack. So I'm going to highlight just the components that I want to copy. And here's kind of like a cool trick. So where it's showing the opportunity to rotate is actually where it's going to then paste once you hit A. So if I hit paste, it's going to want to copy from this panel. If I'm going to select this panel right here. So now I've got this one selected because I know I want this panel to talk to this panel or this connection to add 2 more stations. So I'm going to go ahead and hit A. And now I'm going to turn my snap back on. You'll see it wants to go in and snap to that. So now I've got a 6-pack ready to go. So I'm in my working space. I'm creating the blocks that I need to create. I'm going to highlight this guy. I'm going to create a block. So this is going to be my 6x6 6-pack. And I'm going to do the same for this one here. 6x6 4-pack. As you can see, I'm starting to get a dialog box of blocks ready to go. So I have one instance of a 6x6 4-pack. I have, it starts to give me all my quantities of all of these items. So I'm going to go ahead and hit A to start populating my open office. 18 feet to the next one. That's not to code, but that doesn't matter right now. So there we go. Now we've got a plan populated pretty quickly inside of an open office. All right, so next, let's go to the break room for a second here. They call it activity room. So one of the things that I want to talk through is that blocks aren't just for offices, just for workstations, but you can really leverage blocks even if like you have a quantity of one item, let's say. So let's put in some tables here. We'll have a rectangle and then we'll go over here. And then we'll also put in, let's say, a round table. We'll make it 48. All right. So let's start with these two. Let's say we've got an instance of both these table types in this activity room. And the chair that's around them is going to be the same. So let's go ahead and put in our chair here. So we're going to go ahead and block. Now, I'm going to explode this for a second. Sometimes when manufacturers have rules where the furniture wants to snap to other furniture, it's kind of grouping those and seeing those as one item. So what I want to do is group this chair separately from the table. I do not want them grouped together just yet. So what I'm going to do is call this a break room chair. Now what I'm going to do is copy this guy 4 times around this table. And I'm going to have the same chair around this round. So I'm going to go back into my CET tab. And just because I've made this into a block doesn't necessarily mean that it won't like snap to furniture. So I'm going to use the array or the replicate tool. So I'm going to select this chair that I want around this round table. And even though it's a block, it will still behave as a symbol that is replicatable around a table. And in this case, I just want 4. So let's do 4 of these. I just typed in 4 and just go ahead and click those into place. So now I still have that block there. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this miscellaneous one. And then what I'm gonna do is create a block within a block. So I'm going to create this as a break room rectangle table. And do the same for this round, break room round table. So a lot of times in CET, something can look very similar and maybe not be exactly like the other thing. So in this instance, I know that since this room gets LVT, I want these to have a soft caster. So when you look at a soft caster and a hard caster, aesthetically, they look exactly the same. I can toggle back and forth between these two. Visually, I see nothing different. So one of the things that blocks helps us to do is kind of like remove a bit of that human error element. Is it can look the same and you can have the intentions that you thought you copied it, you thought that you did it exactly the same way as the other one, and just didn't catch that that option line said soft and not hard or otherwise. So using blocks is kind of one of those ways to remove a bit of that human error element, especially since so many of these objects so many times can have just a long list of options. And it's easy to miss something sometimes. So the fact that I can just focus on this one chair and know that those changes are happening on all the chairs feels great, especially when, let's say, in front of a client, they say, hey, I really don't like how that red back looks. Can we switch it to, let's say, blue? What does it look like with blue? Oh my, that's an awful looking chair. But you get my point, is you can make one change and then aesthetically be able to show the client, see, look how that looks now. Well, it looks awful, but you get my point. So you can make that change and make it really, really easily and in front of the client. Or, hey, what if that's a vinyl? Can it be the blue vinyl? Stuff like that. All right, so now we're gonna move into private offices. So, gosh, I don't need these. I don't need these anymore. Actually, I'll keep that 4-pack since I haven't used it yet. We'll just put him in a corner. And I'm gonna pull in a private office typical. Again, these are from our manufacturer symbol library. So really simple just to be able to bring in a typical and modify that. All right, let's take a look at this. Let's see what we've got here. All right, so this is our typical. I'll zoom in on here a little bit. So in this instance, we're bringing in a right-handed. I know we're gonna need a left-handed as well. So just like with the component block, I'm gonna copy this off to the side. And I'm gonna make and modify this to be the opposite hand. Now these symbols, they're absolutely wonderful. Besides not changing the hand of the wardrobe, it was really nice how they kind of all snap together. All right, so what I'm gonna do is same, as in the same way I did with the workstation. No. Explode that. I'm gonna disconnect it. We wanted to see all those as one thing together since they wanted to snap. I'm going to create a separate block for this task chair. So again, when I have instances where it's slightly modified, maybe this is shortened because of a column or a right-handed or left-handed, not having to make as many changes as I need to make. It's for the task chair, I'm changing a color, I'm changing an attribute, I'm only doing it once. So this is my private office task chair. And then I have my private office guest chair. And I'm going to go ahead and put armless because I know I've got a table and guest chairs in here with arms. So I'm going to use that as a way of separating the two. And since this is all ready to go, I'm going to create a block for this private office left hand. Let me take these guys out. I'm going to show my block dialog here. Something really cool is we can actually go into, let's say, this task chair, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag it in. So that's really cool, right? So I don't have to go inside that block and hit Control Copy to copy it, as I can just bring that in from the block dialog box. So I'm going to click that guy in, and then I'm going to find my private office guest chair armless, and I'm going to click and drag that in too. So now when I go to create my block for my right hand, private office right hand, and I mentioned this earlier, with this separate table and chairs, I don't want to group this all together in one private office block, because if my offices aren't consistent in terms of orientation or size, maybe they're slightly different, one has a column, I have the ability to move that table and chairs separately and still have it behave as a block. So I'm going to create my block for my guest with arms. Let me delete that, copy this guy again. And then create my block, private office table and chairs. All right, so now I'm in business and ready to populate my offices with my left hand and my right hand. So I'm going to bring in, just hit copy. I'm going to come down to this private office and place this one in. And then this is one of those offices that gets that table and chairs. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that into place. Now that's snapped. And then this office up here also had that same instance. I'm going to take my other hand, place that right there. And then I'm going to take my table and chairs and place that here. All right, so you can see the office is beginning to really take shape and take shape very quickly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into a live design session. So this is what the client has seen, and they would love to see some changes. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an alternative, because the last thing that we want to do is, I mean, this is another thing that CET has developed for us to use as a tool, is we don't necessarily lose our first iteration, but we can create an alternative, which is how I use alternatives. So I'm creating this as changes after 9/26. I'll actually use dates in my alternative titles. It seems to make the most sense, so I can take a look back chronologically and say, well, gosh, you know, when we met with the client on this day, we made these changes, and then still be able to revert back to the original. Oh, hey, actually, the way it was first done, I kind of want to go back to that. So I try not to ever remove anything. So we're going to be in this alternative. We'll go ahead and close out of that to give us some more space to review. We are going to clone this. So even though I'm in a different alternative, whatever changes I make to this block and subsequently the component blocks will be changed in all the alternatives. So what I want to do is make sure that I clone this block, and I'm going to call it, let's say we're doing an experimentation with the client and they want to add wardrobes. So I'm going to go in here. Now I'm working in a block that's now a completely separate name. It's not the original 6-pack, but it's the one with wardrobes. I'm now going to do the same with this. Just because we renamed the block doesn't mean that these component blocks won't also change if we modify. So I'm going to clone this block, and I'm going to call it with wardrobe. So let's go inside this component block and let's say, well, first off, we don't need that mobile pen. We don't want to see that there. Let's say that the client wants to see a wardrobe here in the corner. So I'm just going to shorten this guy 12 inches, and let's go into our manufacturer tab, and we're going to place in a personal locker. Change that depth to be the same. I'm going to shorten it to match the height of the panel. That looks awesome. See, client? Look how cool that is. So let's go back to our overall block, and you'll notice that that's the only component block that has changed because we cloned it. So now the clients reviewed it and said, yes, this is the direction. This is what we want to do. So rather than going through and deleting all these, let's say like this is an 8-pack or a 10-pack or whatever. The object of the game is we just do this really, really, really quickly. Rather than deleting these, I'm just going to replace them. So I'm going to click on the one that we want to replace. And then I'm going to hit this little button that says replace. And this little, see this little blue X that shows up? I'm going to go ahead and click. And you can see in 3D in real time. I'm going to zoom in on this guy here because we're going to change him in a second. We're going to click again. There it is. So really quickly, we've just modified the design for the client to see really, really quickly. So let's go ahead and change this other side. Client absolutely loves it. This is amazing. I'm going to turn him around, shorten him up. And I'll show you that one more time. Well, see, I didn't clone it that time. Oh, and now all my blocks are changed. Let's go back. See, look what happened. See, that's what happens when you don't clone. But that's okay because we're going to replace anyway. So this one here is our updated. It's got wardrobes on both sides. So now here's what we're going to do. Instead of copying the component block, now we're just going to copy the entire block. So we're going to hit replace, and we're going to click on this 6-pack, this one, and this one. Now all of them have immediately changed. Super quick revision for something that, I don't know, may or may not have seemed to be something difficult to do on the spot in front of a client. I mean, it also depends on how easy your symbols are to work with with your manufacturer. So if they don't behave well, you know, feature requests are always a good thing. But so now we have a 6-pack, or our open office revised now has a new typical design that we've changed rather quickly. All right, so let's talk through some of the bonus benefits of using blocks. So as part of our designer life, audits are super important, right? So we want to make sure that we have all the parts and pieces that we need. So to make this process a little bit easier, because we know that we're blocking things, we know that all of these blocks are exactly the same, is we can go into our calculation tab from this view and simply look at the parts and pieces of this block. So to be able just to print this off really, really quickly and be able just to run through the parts and pieces of this block times 100 or whatever it is, how many instances you have on your floor plate, to be able to focus in and just look at these parts and pieces and feel really good about the rest of the plan because it is all blocked. Another way to leverage the ability just to isolate this block's bill of materials is, let's say you're reviewing this with a salesperson and you want to be able to figure out and talk together about how you could value engineer something. So you can look at this abbreviated list that's just, we're looking at 29 lines versus X amount more, just seeing cumbersome looking at the whole plan, but it just allows you to focus. Just as with a client in live design, to focus in on just this area versus viewing and trying to view this plan in a sea of all of these other areas happening in the background, right? It's a nice way to be able to isolate and just look at the thing you want to focus on, whether that is to value engineer, whether it is to perform an audit, or to focus with a client around parts and pieces and components. Another really cool benefit of using blocks. So when I look at tags, sometimes it can get a little messy. Sometimes you can have tag on top of tag, and the ability to be able to just move these tags one time is much nicer than moving your tags in several different areas. So when you're reorganizing these tags to make it easier for an installer to read, you're only shifting them one time versus for an entire floor plate. So that's another benefit. You take the time to move all these tags. It does it on all of the other ones as well. All right, another really cool benefit to using blocks. So let's say this floor plan was like 10 times the size, is I could easily go into, let's say each wing, let's say this is a wing of 6 wings, is I can highlight all of these blocks together. I can right click and I can freeze. I can't tell you how many times I've used this tool on the regular, especially performing live designs in front of clients, so that when we are focusing in on something, I can make my drawing move that much faster. So let's say today we're focusing on these private offices and we're working through, do you want this? Do you want that? How do you feel about? And we don't have to wait for our CET to catch up because it's trying to visualize all of the workstations in 3D, when really we don't really need to do that because our focus is on the private offices. And it makes loading the drawing that much faster too when you already have these frozen. And if you want to unfreeze it, all you have to do is just unfreeze. But a lot of times when I am working with much larger drawings, I'll go ahead and freeze the areas that I don't need to visualize and just leave the ones up that I do. It just makes it that much faster. And also, I learned this the other day. This is one of the last things that I'll share with you, is when you do when you do block something together, CET sees it as one entity, one item. So when you are loading or you are moving around the drawing, it doesn't want to reload or regenerate or rebuild tens of items. It's just seeing it as one. So that's kind of another bonus of an incentive to use blocks as much as you can, really. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here. Hopefully you won't say these things anymore now that you know how amazing blocks are. I hope this has helped. More so, I hope this has really encouraged you to use these tools designed by CET to help you pre-plan and iterate really quickly and live design in front of a client with ease and just make you look like the rock star that you are. Scan this QR code to receive credit with IDCEC. And of course, my email's up here too. Hope you enjoyed today, and I'll see you next time.